Insignificant little pest. Trump's voice cut through the chamber like a whip. Jasmine Crockett barely flinched. In that room filled with 200 journalists and over 100 cameras rolling, every word mattered, every second counted. For decades, the halls of power had tolerated billions in hidden transactions, secret memos, and untold abuses of authority. But today, Crockett held evidence that could expose a lifetime of lies. 45 incriminating documents, 12 confidential emails, 3 damning audio recordings. Trump smirked, leaning back as if nothing could touch him. But the storm in Crockett's eyes told a different story. Every heartbeat, every subtle gesture, was about to turn this courtroom into a battlefield where justice itself would be the weapon. In less than a minute, the air was electric, charged with tension. 2 forces collided: Trump, the untouchable kingpin of chaos, and Crockett, the relentless warrior armed with truth, ready to shatter every mask of power. The chamber itself seemed to breathe with anticipation. Rows of wooden benches, polished to a sterile shine, were packed with journalists, aides, and spectators, their eyes wide, cameras poised. Flashbulbs popped intermittently, igniting brief bursts of brilliance that danced across the marble walls, reflecting off the polished brass nameplates and the glinting edges of thick legal documents stacked neatly on the tables. Whispers fluttered like restless birds, a nervous undercurrent to the tense symphony of the room. Every step, every shuffling of papers, every cough amplified against the vaulted ceiling. At the far end, Donald Trump entered with the deliberate swagger of a man who had conquered every room he had ever entered. His suit was immaculate, his tie perfectly knotted. But it was the aura, the almost palpable confidence, that filled the space before he even spoke. Heads turned instinctively, some in admiration, some in caution. A smirk tugged at his lips, sharp and predatory, as he scanned the room like a king surveying his court. His hand rested briefly on the edge of the witness table, claiming space, demanding attention, asserting dominance without uttering a word. Every movement was calculated, an exhibition of power honed over decades. And then from the other side of the chamber, Jasmine Crockett emerged. She didn't strut, she didn't preen. Her presence was quieter, yet no less formidable. Her shoulders squared, chin lifted slightly, eyes scanning the crowd with measured awareness. In her hands, she carried a stack of evidence, the weight of which mirrored the gravity of the moment. Each step she took was purposeful, deliberate, echoing softly against the polished floors, a counterpoint to the chaos that threatened to erupt. She was a soldier in a silent war, poised and unyielding, radiating a calm that belied the storm she carried within. The room seemed to shrink as the 2 figures claimed their territories, the untouchable mogul and the unrelenting crusader. Every whisper, every camera click, every subtle exchange of glances between aides and reporters added to the sense of imminent collision. The public gallery was a sea of faces, some pressed to the glass, some leaning forward on wooden benches, all sensing that they were about to witness history unfold. The atmosphere was thick, a heavy, almost tangible tension that settled over the chamber like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Reporters frantically adjusted lenses, scribbled notes, and murmured to colleagues, their pens and recorders capturing every nuance. The air smelled faintly of polished wood, ink, and anticipation, the scent of power and accountability converging in one enclosed space. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed amplified, as if the room itself was straining under the weight of the moment. Trump moved toward his designated seat with a slow, deliberate confidence. Every step measured, each gesture radiating the authority of a man who had spent decades bending rooms and institutions to his will. He lowered himself into the chair with a sense of inevitability, as though every seat he occupied had been claimed in advance, and every eye in the room belonged to him. Crockett, meanwhile, approached the table opposite him, setting her evidence down with precision. She did not speak yet. Words were weapons, and she had chosen the perfect moment. Her gaze met Trump's, unflinching, unwavering, a silent declaration that the game had begun, and she was not merely a player, but the one who would dictate its rules. The chamber held its breath. Every tick of the clock, every faint scrape of a chair, every suppressed cough seemed to stretch longer, slower, until time itself felt elastic, bending under the gravity of expectation. History, justice, and spectacle coalesced in that single charged moment. And as the gavel hovered, poised to signal the start of the proceedings, the tension became almost unbearable. This was more than a hearing. It was the opening act of a confrontation that would test courage against hubris, truth against deception, and the quiet strength of one woman against the overwhelming force of a legacy built on power. The storm had arrived, and the first lightning strike was yet to come. Trump rose slowly from his chair, every movement exaggerated, deliberate, a display of dominance. His fingers drummed lightly against the polished oak of the witness table, each tap echoing like the heartbeat of a predator sizing up its prey. A smile, sharp and calculated, curled across his lips. "Oh, come on," he said, voice rich with condescension. "You all really think this little exercise in theatrics is going to impress anyone?" He leaned back slightly, crossing one leg over the other, the picture of supreme confidence. His eyes scanned the chamber with the precision of a hawk hunting in open skies, briefly locking on reporters, then Crockett, then back to the gallery, as if daring anyone to challenge him. His smirk widened into a laugh, a slow, resonant chuckle that rolled through the room, bouncing off the marble walls and wooden panels, commanding attention and subtly warning dissenters of the force they faced. Every gesture was a calculated performance. He flicked his hand dismissively at the pile of documents Crockett had set on the table, a subtle suggestion that her efforts were insignificant, trivial, and easily ignored. Then, with a tilt of his head and a raised eyebrow, he leaned forward again, scanning the crowd with a predator's intensity, as though hunting for the weakest point in their attention. The effect was instantaneous. An almost tangible wave of tension spread across the room. His supporters, already seated on the edges of the chamber, responded instinctively. Small nods became murmured affirmations. Murmurs became applause. Applause became near roars of approval. The collective energy of the crowd surged, amplifying his dominance, like an echo chamber magnifying his every word and movement. Cameras whirred and flashes erupted, capturing every nuance of his expressions, every subtle twitch of his mouth, every spark of arrogance in his gaze. Trump's voice rose again, cutting through the charged atmosphere like a knife. "I've seen hundreds of these hearings. They all start the same way. Loud words, big claims, and absolutely nothing to back them up. It's cute, really, that someone thinks they can challenge decades of experience." His eyes flicked toward Crockett, a slow, deliberate scan that seemed to weigh her very soul. Then he leaned back in his chair, hands folded behind his head, a posture both arrogant and defiant, as though daring the chamber to challenge him. Every inhale, every subtle shift of weight radiated authority. He was not merely present, he was the room incarnate, a force that demanded attention, respect, and submission. Yet the chamber itself seemed to react against him. The journalists, the spectators, even some of his own aides felt the tension twist and coil like a living entity, humming with anticipation. He was a predator, yes, but predators are most dangerous when underestimated, and Trump knew it. Every taunt, every dismissive laugh, every subtle glare was designed to unsettle, to provoke, to remind everyone in the room who held the power. His smirk returned, sharper this time, curling into a sneer. "Honestly," he continued, voice dripping with scorn, "some of you really think rules and procedures matter. Adorable, really. But history doesn't bend for tiny interruptions or little speeches from people who think they're important. It bends for power, and I've got plenty." The applause from his loyalists swelled, a tide that crashed against the chamber like a warning wave. The energy in the room was almost oppressive, a thick, vibrating pressure that pressed against the walls, the ceiling, the very air itself. Trump thrived in it, feeding off the response, his posture more commanding, his gestures more pronounced, his voice even richer, heavier, as though each word carried the weight of his empire. Yet across the table, Crockett's presence remained unwavering, a calm center in the storm. Her eyes never wavered from his, and in that quiet defiance, the chamber seemed to shift imperceptibly. The tension that Trump sought to command was no longer entirely his. It had been shared, redistributed. The room began to realize that the predator might not have complete control after all. Trump noticed it too, a brief flicker of something in his gaze before it hardened again. A recognition that this was not just another staged hearing. This was different. And for the first time, perhaps, he sensed that the storm he thought he commanded might be about to strike back at him. Every chuckle, every condescending gesture, every glimmer of arrogance, each one a sharpened talon, was a part of the show. But the audience could feel it. The game had begun, the hunt was underway, and the rules were about to change. In that chamber, under the harsh glare of cameras and history alike, Donald Trump reigned like a king of chaos, a predator at the top of his domain. But even kings can stumble, and the first crack in his armor was already forming, visible only to those with the courage to see it. Jasmine Crockett rose from her seat, the movement deliberate and unhurried, each step resonating like a drumbeat across the polished floor. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and let her gaze sweep over the chamber with quiet authority. The hum of anticipation grew louder, yet she did not flinch, nor did she betray a hint of uncertainty. In that instant, she became the eye of the storm, calm and unyielding, while the chaotic energy surrounding Trump swirled like a tempest outside a window. Her voice, when it came, cut through the tension like a blade, resonant and unwavering. "Mr. Trump," she began, slow and precise, "how do you justify hiding billions in transactions from the very people who trusted you? How do you reconcile claiming transparency while destroying documents that the public had every right to see?" The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable, and the room seemed to pause, waiting for the reaction they knew would come. Trump's grin faltered for the briefest of moments, a twitch at the corner of his mouth before he masked it with a smirk that barely concealed irritation. Crockett pressed on, her questions sharp and unrelenting, each one designed to unsettle, to probe, to pierce through the veneer of control he had so meticulously maintained. "Why were emails deleted the night before investigators arrived?" she continued, her tone calm but edged with steel. "Why were internal reports altered to mislead not just Congress, but the American people themselves?" Her gaze never wavered, unwavering as the truth she wielded like a shield. Inside, she felt no fear. There was only purpose, only the quiet, resolute conviction that justice demanded confrontation, even against the most untouchable of adversaries. She could feel the weight of history pressing against her, the legacy of those who had been silenced or ignored. It fueled her, sharpened her focus, made every word a hammer striking at the walls of deception. The chamber reacted almost immediately. A ripple ran through the spectators. Whispers rose and fell like waves against the hull of a ship caught in a storm. Some gasped audibly, others leaned forward, eyes wide, pens poised to capture the unfolding drama. Even among Trump's loyalists, there were subtle shifts, eyebrows raised, heads tilted, the tiniest flicker of doubt crossing the faces of those who had been confident in his untouchability. Crockett's questions were more than just inquiries. They were psychological strikes, each one probing for a reaction, each one testing the limits of composure. She didn't shout, she didn't berate. She let the weight of her words and the silence that followed carry the force. Every pause, every careful articulation was a calculated maneuver designed to make the room, and Trump himself, feel the gravity of the scrutiny. Trump's eyes narrowed, a predatory flash returning as he attempted to reassert control. "Really?" he said, voice edged with mockery. "You think asking a few pointed questions changes the facts? It's entertaining, I'll give you that. But facts, well, facts speak for themselves." The audience held their breath, sensing that this was no ordinary exchange. Crockett did not flinch at his condescension. Instead, she allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile, one born not of triumph, but of certainty. Her mind was a calm sea. Her purpose was unwavering. Justice, not spectacle, guided her hand. She continued, her voice rising slightly, controlled yet imbued with undeniable authority. "Facts, Mr. Trump, are not just numbers on a page. They are lives affected, trust betrayed, institutions undermined. And you, sir, have been entrusted with power to protect them, not exploit them. A hush fell over the room. Cameras whirred, flashes popped, and the weight of her words pressed into every corner of the chamber. Journalists scribbled frantically, spectators leaned forward, and aides shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The energy crackled, almost visible, a tangible tension connecting every person present to the clash unfolding before them. Trump leaned forward slightly, attempting to regain his edge, his eyes darting toward his supporters as if to draw strength. But Crockett's presence was magnetic, drawing the attention of the undecided, the neutral, and even some who had assumed his dominance was absolute. She had seized the moment, the room, and the moral high ground simultaneously, a feat that few could ever accomplish against a figure of his magnitude. For a brief heartbeat, the chamber seemed suspended in time. Two forces locked in silent war. Trump, the practiced predator relying on intimidation and spectacle, and Crockett, the unwavering crusader armed with truth, calm yet devastating. And as the murmurs settled into a tense quiet, everyone present, journalists, spectators, aides, and even Trump himself, realized that the battle had only just begun, and that the first strike had landed with precision, clarity, and unyielding force. Trump's jaw tightened, a flash of irritation crossing his composed facade. He leaned forward suddenly, cutting through the charged silence like a knife. "Let's get real," he began, voice sharp, laced with mockery, dripping with derision. "How old are you again, Miss Crockett? 25? 26? And here you are, standing up in front of a room full of grown adults, acting like you know how the world works." The words ricocheted around the chamber. A few gasps rippled through the spectators. Some pens paused mid-scribble, while cameras whirred to capture every nuance of the unfolding confrontation. Trump's eyes gleamed with a predatory sparkle, a mix of arrogance and calculated provocation, as he continued. "You're young, inexperienced, and forgive me, a woman trying to lecture men who built empires," he sneered, each syllable carefully sharpened, designed to sting. "Do you even understand the power you're pretending to wield? Or are you just another idealist with a stack of papers, thinking morality can override reality?" His hands gestured broadly, emphasizing each insult, each jab. Fingers jabbed at the air, tracing invisible lines of dominance. His laugh, sudden and low, rolled through the chamber, echoing off the high ceilings like the roar of a beast asserting territory. The condescension was palpable, almost tangible, a heavy, oppressive weight pressing against everyone in the room. Trump's supporters erupted quietly, a swell of nods and murmurs, affirming his attacks. Their presence amplified the tension, creating an almost suffocating atmosphere. The noise of pen scratching, chairs shifting, and camera shutters clicking added to the electric energy, each sound punctuating the venom in his words. Yet Crockett remained unmoved, her spine straightened, eyes locking onto Trump with a precision that rivaled the sharpest blade. The room seemed to bend around her composure. The storm outside, Trump's verbal barrage, did not sway her. Inside, there was no fear, no hesitation. There was only focus, clarity, and an unwavering commitment to the truth she carried. Trump smirked, trying to provoke a reaction. "You're standing there, arms folded like a hero from some comic book," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "But look around you. This isn't a storybook. This is the real world. You're a little soldier in a much bigger game, and you don't even know the rules yet." Every word was calculated to undermine, to belittle, to strike at her confidence, but Crockett's gaze never wavered. The chamber felt the tension in the silence between their exchanges. Every heartbeat, every breath, was amplified by the heavy anticipation. She didn't respond immediately. She let the moment stretch, let the weight of his arrogance hang in the air, before slowly, deliberately, returning his stare with a calm that made the chamber hold its breath. Trump's tone sharpened further, his eyes narrowing as he leaned closer, speaking with a mix of menace and theatricality. "Do you even realize what you're up against? A lifetime of influence, billions at my command, and decades of people bending to my will. And here you are, thinking a few questions and some righteous indignation can touch me?" The room reacted. Journalists scribbled frantically, cameras whirred, and the spectators leaned forward, some instinctively clutching the railings in tension. The clash was no longer abstract, it was visceral, palpable. Trump was the apex predator, vocalizing dominance, testing Crockett's resolve, trying to provoke an imperfection, and yet Crockett's calm was her weapon. Her lips barely parted, her hands rested lightly on the table, fingers poised but not tense. She radiated quiet authority, her eyes sharp, cutting through the theatrics like sunlight through storm clouds. Each inhale, each subtle shift, conveyed a readiness to counter, a promise that his verbal attacks would meet the weight of truth, not fury. Trump's smile faltered for a brief instant, just long enough for a few observant spectators to notice. Even in his performance, there was a flicker of uncertainty, a crack in the armor he had meticulously built over decades. And Crockett, unshaken, sensed it. She did not gloat, she did not react overtly, but the room could feel it. The tide was shifting, imperceptibly yet inexorably. He jabbed one last time, voice dripping with scorn. Honestly, you should be careful. Standing there trying to lecture someone like me? It's cute, really. Brave, but cute. History eats people like you for breakfast. Crockett's eyes narrowed slightly, sharper than a blade's edge. A promise unspoken but understood. The chamber felt alive, vibrating with the tension between them. Every whispered note, every shutter click, every scribble of a pen was a testament to the gravity of this moment. This was not just a clash of words, it was a battle for perception, for power, for the very truth that each participant represented. And as Trump reclined slightly, regaining a fraction of his composure, the room exhaled collectively, knowing the opening salvo had been fired. The verbal strikes had landed, personal and cutting, but the war, the real, unrelenting confrontation, was far from over. Crockett leaned forward, placing both hands firmly on the edge of the table, the faint rustle of papers echoing like a drumbeat across the chamber. She drew a deep breath and lifted the first piece of evidence. Thick, official-looking documents stamped with dates, signatures, and confidential markings. The room leaned in instinctively. Cameras focused, pens hovered, and even some of Trump's aides stiffened, sensing that the narrative was about to shift. These documents, she began, voice steady and commanding, detail a series of financial transactions, hidden offshore accounts amounting to over $120 million, that were deliberately concealed from regulatory oversight. Every number, every entry has been verified and cross-referenced. These are not allegations. These are facts. A collective gasp rose from the gallery. Spectators shifted in their seats. Journalists scribbled frantically, and the cameras clicked furiously. The energy in the room spiked, a visible ripple of shock and disbelief sweeping across faces that had anticipated theatrics, but not tangible, undeniable proof. Trump's expression tightened imperceptibly at first, a subtle furrow of his brow, then a slight curl of his upper lip. He leaned back, attempting to absorb the impact, but his fingers tapped nervously against the polished table, a small telltale sign that the fortress of confidence he had projected was being breached. Crockett did not pause. With measured precision, she flipped the pages, highlighting entries and pointing to calculations with the quiet authority of someone wielding a scalpel. Each transaction was masked with layers of false reporting. Here, note the discrepancies between reported earnings and actual cash flow. Over a 5-year span, these manipulations defrauded investors, taxpayers, and the institutions charged with oversight. The chamber felt charged like air before a lightning strike. Every eye was fixed on her. Even those who had once doubted her capacity to confront Trump now watched with awe, riveted by the clarity and force of her exposition. The documents, once inert paper, now carried the weight of revelation, each number a weapon, each signature a hammer striking at the edifice of deception. Trump shifted in his chair, attempting to reassert dominance. "Now, wait a second," he interrupted, voice rising slightly, laced with mockery. "These are just numbers on paper. Anyone can make numbers say anything. Do you really think these papers, these documents, prove anything? They're insignificant, fabricated probably." But Crockett's eyes remained locked on him, unwavering, sharp as daggers. Insignificant, she countered, voice rising with authority yet controlled, each syllable crisp, precise. These documents are corroborated by independent audits, cross-referenced by multiple agencies. Each entry corresponds to real transfers, real accounts, real violations. This isn't conjecture, Mr. Trump. This is undeniable evidence of deliberate obfuscation. She lifted another document, a spreadsheet detailing dates, amounts, and corresponding internal memos, sliding it toward the center of the table. The camera lenses captured every detail, magnifying the impact. A hushed murmur spread through the gallery. Some whispered, some gasped aloud, all sensing the gravity of what was being revealed. Trump attempted to diminish the impact, leaning forward with a dismissive handwave. Come on, anyone could have put together a chart like that. We're talking about bureaucrats trying to create drama. It doesn't prove intent. It doesn't prove wrongdoing. Look at her. She's clutching papers like they're weapons. But Crockett did not waver. Her voice carried the calm ferocity of someone unafraid of confrontation. Intent is in the patterns, Mr. Trump. The systematic concealment, the altered reports, the timing of each transfer, it all points to deliberate action. These papers are not weapons. They are mirrors reflecting choices that betray trust. Every number, every note, is a piece of the truth you tried to hide. The reaction in the chamber intensified. Reporters leaned forward, pens flying across notepads. Cameras whirred incessantly. Spectators gripped railings, some mouths agape, unable to process the weight of the evidence being unveiled. Even Trump's closest aides exchanged quick, tense glances, their composure rattled by the precision and impact of Crockett's revelations. Trump's jaw tightened, and a fleeting glance toward his papers suggested a momentary scramble for counterpoints. But the room could sense the falter. He attempted to deflect. These are just numbers, fabricated narratives. You're relying on documentation without context. Crockett's gaze did not flinch. She placed a hand flat on the table, leaning slightly toward him. Context, Mr. Trump, is irrelevant when patterns point unmistakably to deception. Intent is proven by consistency and timing, both of which are documented here. Each document, each figure, corroborates the others. The evidence is overwhelming, and no obfuscation can erase that truth. A ripple of shock and awe spread across the chamber. The air felt electric, charged with tension, history, and the undeniable confrontation between authority and accountability. The audience, previously passive, now seemed suspended, collectively holding their breath as the first layers of deception were torn apart by one relentless voice. Trump's fingers drummed against the table again, a nervous tick betraying the effort to maintain composure. He opened his mouth, searching for a retort that could lessen the impact. But Crockett's steady presence, precise words, and indisputable evidence had already claimed the moral high ground. The room had shifted perceptibly. The first major strike in the battle had landed, and it had landed hard. The gallery watched, rapt, as Crockett organized the documents for display, each movement deliberate, her voice carrying every syllable with authority. Every journalist, every camera, every observer understood. This was the moment where evidence became action, where truth confronted power, and where the narrative of control began to fracture under the weight of undeniable proof. Trump's composure shattered like glass. He slammed his palm against the polished oak of the table, a sharp crack echoing through the chamber, drawing gasps from the gallery. "This is fake, fraudulent, totally fabricated," he bellowed, voice rising to a near shriek, resonating with a mix of indignation and panic. His fingers trembled visibly, betraying the storm of nerves beneath his carefully constructed exterior. Breath came in ragged bursts, each inhale sharp, each exhale heavy, as if he were trying to suck in control that was slipping through his fingers. His eyes darted between Crockett and the documents, searching for some flaw, some opening, some avenue to reclaim dominance. The well-rehearsed mask of arrogance faltered under the relentless scrutiny of facts. Crockett, unmoved, let the room absorb the cacophony of his fury. She did not speak. She allowed a few seconds to pass, 5, maybe 6. But in that silence, the weight of the evidence, the gravity of truth, and the inevitability of accountability pressed down on the chamber like a physical force. Every eye followed her, Every camera froze on her poised stance. Her stillness became a weapon, more devastating than any retort she could utter in words. Trump's gestures grew more frantic. He waved his arms, knocking papers slightly askew, as if physical force could scatter the undeniable. "This is nonsense, lies, misrepresentation." His voice cracked under the strain, oscillating between rage and desperation. The polished veneer of confidence that had dominated the room just moments ago now appeared brittle, like a structure under seismic pressure. The gallery was tense, spectators leaning forward, some clutching their seats, others whispering to neighbors, their own breath caught in the charged atmosphere. Reporters scrambled, pens moving frenetically, trying to capture the volatile energy. The chamber had transformed into a gladiatorial arena, a battlefield where the weapons were words, documents, and unyielding conviction. Trump's face reddened, his jaw twitching as if the effort to regain composure required muscles unaccustomed to vulnerability. His hands shook slightly, betraying the neurological tension coiling through him. He opened his mouth again, voice rising further, but the words came out in staccato bursts, each claim of fraud and fake, weaker under the weight of Crockett's calm. Crockett finally spoke, voice low, measured, carrying the quiet authority of someone who knows the storm will pass. But the consequences of falsehood will not. "Mr. Trump," she said, letting her words fall slowly, deliberately, "the documents are verified. Each transfer, each discrepancy, each memo has been corroborated. Your attempts to dismiss them as fake do not diminish their validity. Denial does not erase truth." The effect was immediate. The chamber seemed to hold its breath, the tension almost palpable. Trump's furious pacing slowed as the weight of her words sank in. His attempts to dominate with volume and theatrics collided with the immovable presence of irrefutable fact. The energy in the room crackled, a storm within walls where power and accountability locked in mortal contest. Trump jabbed a finger at her, leaning forward in defiance, eyes wild. "You think a few papers make you powerful? You think you can humiliate me in front of this room? I am the reality. You are just—" His words faltered. His usual precision of insult was lost in the tidal wave of evidence and Crockett's unshakable calm. Crockett's gaze did not waver, sharp as a blade cutting through chaos. The pause she allowed, the stillness she maintained, magnified the power of her words. The audience sensed it. The cameras captured it. Even Trump's aides could feel the shift. Every second stretched, emphasizing the truth that was now undeniable. Trump slammed his hand again, more out of instinct than strategy, the echo reverberating like the sound of a closing door on his perceived invincibility. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. But even as he spoke, there was a subtle tremor in his voice, a recognition that control was slipping, that his usual tactics of bluster and intimidation were failing against the calm, relentless force of Crockett's evidence and presence. Crockett's eyes swept the room once, steady, commanding, before returning to him. "This is not about intimidation, Mr. Trump," she said, each word deliberate, a measured strike against chaos. "This is about accountability, and no amount of shouting, no amount of denial can change the facts before you, before this chamber, and before the public. The truth does not bow to fury." A hush settled over the room. Even the murmurs of astonishment quieted, as if the chamber itself was listening, absorbing the weight of confrontation. The gladiatorial arena had taken form, and for a moment, power and truth faced each other with nothing but intent and conviction as armor. Trump's breathing was heavy, his hands still trembling. The theatrics, the condescension, the insults, they had all collided against the solid wall of Crockett's composure and evidence. The battle had escalated to a fever pitch. The room itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation of the next strike, as if the air had thickened into a medium for the war between chaos and justice. And there, in that tense silence punctuated only by ragged breaths, camera clicks, and the faint rustle of papers, the chamber understood. The confrontation had reached a point of no return. The struggle was no longer merely personal. It was historical, moral, and electrifyingly real. Truth and power had collided, and for the first time, the predator could not easily dictate the terms of the battle. Crockett's eyes narrowed slightly, but the calm she radiated was lethal. She leaned forward again, letting the silence stretch for a moment longer, until every heartbeat in the chamber felt amplified. Then she began. "Mr. Trump," she said, each word measured but insistent, "were you aware that these transactions were intentionally concealed from federal authorities?" Trump's usual sharp retort faltered. His throat moved as if preparing to speak, but no words came immediately. The gallery noticed the hesitation. Pens stopped mid-scribble. Cameras held focus, and the air seemed to thicken with expectation. Crockett pressed on, relentless. "And why, when these discrepancies were first discovered internally, did you authorize their alteration rather than full disclosure?" Her voice was steady, unwavering, but the weight of each question landed like a hammer. Trump shifted in his seat, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his expression. His hand twitched, brushing papers aside as if physical motion could ward off the growing pressure. That's not how it happened," he stammered, a rare crack in his verbal armor. "I mean, the documents, they were—" His words trailed off, unformed, betraying the chaos beneath the surface. Crockett's gaze remained fixed, piercing. She let the pause linger just long enough for the tension to crystallize, for every observer to feel the shift. Then she continued, voice rising slightly, each question another tightening noose. "Mr. Trump, did you or did you not instruct staff to delay reporting these figures until after audits were completed? And why did emails detailing these orders disappear the very night investigators arrived?" His hands trembled now, betraying his mounting frustration. He leaned back, opening his mouth to interrupt, only to be met with Crockett's unyielding stare. The rhythm of the chamber, breaths, clicks, scribbles, seemed to synchronize with the tension, each sound emphasizing the tightening grip she had on the narrative. Crockett allowed herself a moment, just a flicker of patience, before pressing further. "Every attempt to dismiss this evidence as fake or misleading falls apart when the documentation is corroborated independently. Can you explain these irregularities without resorting to deflection?" Trump's eyes darted around, seeking validation, searching for some ally in the room. The supporters shifted uncomfortably, sensing the room's energy shifting beneath them. He opened his mouth again, voice strained. "Well, I mean, context matters. These numbers, you're interpreting them wrong." But the gallery, the neutral observers, the undecided, were leaning toward Crockett. Her calm precision, the way she threaded questions with undeniable evidence, began to shift perception. Each pause, each pointed inquiry, revealed cracks in Trump's narrative. His usually commanding voice now wavered, faltering under the weight of scrutiny he could not deflect. Crockett's rhythm was deliberate. She spoke, paused, allowed the tension to settle, and struck again. "And why, Mr. Trump, were internal reports altered only after they were requested by oversight committees? Was that an act of transparency or concealment?" A subtle tremor ran through the room. Trump's hand tapped nervously against the table, a signal of the strain coursing through him. His jaw tightened, eyes flicking to the documents she had laid out. For the first time in the confrontation, he hesitated in full view, unable to dominate the narrative by sheer volume alone. The journalists scribbled furiously, the sounds of pens and papers punctuating the high-stakes interrogation. Cameras zoomed, capturing every twitch, every glance, every faltering syllable. The chamber itself seemed alive, a witness to the collision of methodical inquiry and fraying dominance. Crockett did not relent. Every memo, every ledger, every email deleted at the moment of scrutiny. These are not coincidences, Mr. Trump. They are patterns that point directly to deliberate attempts to obscure the truth. How do you justify this?" Trump's voice grew higher, strained. This is ridiculous. You're spinning a story that doesn't exist." His words, once so sure, now carried tremors of panic. He leaned back, swallowing hard, as if trying to regain air and control simultaneously. The gallery could feel the pressure tightening. The neutral spectators, who had watched with cautious interest, now shifted visibly. Heads tilted, pens scribbling faster, eyes narrowing on the methodical precision of Crockett's approach. The balance was tilting. The room, once dominated by Trump's aura of invulnerability, was slowly bending toward her. Crockett's eyes swept over the chamber again, calm yet unyielding. She allowed a single deliberate pause before delivering her next strike. Mr. Trump, are you denying responsibility for instructing these actions? Or are you admitting finally that these were deliberate acts of concealment? The silence that followed was suffocating. Every breath, every heartbeat, every camera shutter seemed amplified 1,000-fold. Trump's lips parted, closed, then parted again. For the first time, the predator seemed cornered, faltering under the weight of evidence, precision questioning, and moral authority. The gallery leaned forward collectively, the tension so thick it could be felt physically. Crockett's strategy had worked. Step by step, question by question, she had tightened the noose, and the apex predator of chaos now appeared distinctly human, vulnerable under scrutiny. And in that charged moment, it was undeniable. The momentum had shifted. The neutral observers, the undecided, even some longtime allies, were now attuned to the rhythm of truth that Crockett dictated. The chamber had become her arena, and the predator, once untouchable, was now being forced to respond, falter, and defend against the relentless, surgical precision of her inquiries. The room erupted into a tense, electric energy as Crockett leaned forward, voice slicing through the chamber like a rapier. "Mr. Trump," she said, eyes narrowing, voice steady yet razor-sharp, "you claim these transactions were mere administrative errors, but your own emails contradict that. Care to explain why you instructed staff to delay reporting while simultaneously directing the redaction of internal memos?" Trump's face twitched. His usual commanding tone wavered, cracking under the intensity of the interrogation. It was misinterpreted," he sputtered, flailing for words as if they were lifelines thrown into turbulent waters. Crockett pressed, step by step, relentless. Each question was precise, each syllable calculated to exploit the smallest fissure in his defenses. "Misinterpreted?" she repeated, leaning slightly forward. "So you're admitting that instructions were given, emails were altered, yet somehow you expect us to believe intent is irrelevant?" The chamber seemed to constrict, every observer caught in the gravity of the verbal duel. The reporters scribbled furiously, cameras zoomed to catch every flicker of expression, and the subtle tremor in Trump's hands betrayed the strain of being cornered. Trump tried to regain control, voice louder now, harsher. "I've built empires, I've created wealth, I've done more for this country than anyone sitting here." He slammed his hand on the table, the sound reverberating like a gavel striking judgment. "These numbers, these documents, they're lies, fabrications. You can't pin this on me." Crockett's eyes, however, were unyielding. She seized on the gap, the slight hesitation in his denial, and pressed forward. "Fabrications?" she echoed, letting the word linger in the chamber like a warning. "Yet your signature is on the very memos ordering these actions. Your fingerprints are on the spreadsheets. Every independent audit confirms a sequence of events. If this is fabrication, then reality itself is conspiring with you." The gallery reacted instantly. Whispers escalated to murmurs, murmurs to outright reactions. Some gasped, others murmured in astonishment, and a few supporters shifted uneasily, sensing that the tide of public perception was tilting. The tension was so thick it seemed almost tangible, like a storm trapped under the chamber's vaulted ceiling. Trump's jaw clenched, eyes narrowing to dangerous slits. He leaned forward, voice rising, volume now shaking with a mixture of anger and desperation. "You're spinning narratives. You think a few charts, a few papers, and a few carefully chosen words make you the judge of reality? I will not be humiliated here." Crockett's calm was her weapon. She allowed a beat of silence, just long enough for the room to feel the weight of his faltering composure. Then, with surgical precision, she struck. "Humiliated? The only humiliation comes from denial in the face of truth. Mr. Trump, how do you explain the timing of these transfers? Emails show deliberate action coinciding with oversight visits. How do you justify this coordination if not deliberate concealment?" A ripple of disbelief swept through the chamber. Trump's lips pressed into a thin line, his breathing rapid. The audience, journalists, and even some of his aides leaned forward, sensing the predator faltering for the first time in full view. Every syllable Crockett spoke acted like a parry and thrust in a duel, exposing weakness, exploiting hesitation. Trump slammed the table again, almost losing his balance, voice now bordering on hysteria. "This is a witch hunt. It's a scam. You, you can't prove—" He stopped mid-sentence as his own words trailed off under Crockett's piercing gaze. Crockett's response was measured but merciless. "Prove? Mr. Trump, the proof is not in my words alone. It is here," she said, gesturing to the meticulously organized documents before the chamber. "In these records, in verified numbers, in your own communications. You cannot wish them away, ignore them, or shout them into oblivion. Every attempt to deflect only tightens the scrutiny." The room erupted, some in applause, some in murmurs of astonishment. The tension was at its peak. The chamber itself seemed to tremble under the intensity of the confrontation. Reporters' pens scratched frantically, cameras clicked incessantly, and every observer felt as if they were witnessing history unfolding in real time. Trump's composure finally cracked. His voice, once booming and commanding, now wavered, laced with panic. I don't, this isn't—" He trailed off, hands gripping the edges of the table, knuckles white. His eyes darted wildly, scanning for allies, for rescue, for any escape from the relentless spotlight of Crockett's interrogation. Crockett leaned slightly closer, voice calm, deliberate, and scalding. "You are cornered not by emotion or rhetoric, Mr. Trump, but by facts. Facts that you cannot fabricate, cannot spin, and cannot ignore. You are facing accountability, and for the first time, even those who once hesitated see clearly. The narrative is no longer yours to control." The gallery responded instantly, gasps, whispered affirmations, subtle clapping from those moved by the display of precision and moral clarity. Even the most loyal observers began to sense the shift, the undeniable power of truth measured against bluster and denial. Trump's hands shook visibly now, his breathing uneven, the high-pitched edge of his voice betraying desperation. He leaned back, attempting a final, faltering assertion of dominance. This is impossible. You can't—" But Crockett interrupted with a measured, icy calm. "Impossible, perhaps, only if you refuse to confront reality. And the reality is, Mr. Trump, that every attempt to mislead, every effort to conceal, is now exposed. The chamber sees, history sees, and the world will not forget. Your dominance is no longer unchallenged. You are facing the consequences of your own actions." The tension hit its zenith. Trump's control, the aura of untouchable authority he had wielded so long, was crumbling under the relentless pressure. The chamber, alive with history in the making, felt every tremor of emotion, every tactical thrust of words, every pause that hung like steel wire across the room. And in that moment, the duel, the battle of intellect, morality, and courage, reached its peak. Crockett's composure, precision, and unyielding pursuit of truth had brought the apex predator to the edge. The audience, suspended between disbelief and awe, witnessed a predator nearly stripped of control, cornered by the inescapable force of accountability. Trump's face flushed a deep crimson, veins pulsing at his temples. Words that had long been calculated and controlled now tumbled out in a torrent, unfiltered and raw. This is bullshit. Absolute bullshit. You think you can humiliate me here?" His hands flailed, knocking papers across the polished table, scattering documents that Crockett had so meticulously organized. The gallery gasped. Cameras swiveled to catch every twitch of expression, every flare of anger, every muscle tightening in his face. His voice rose to a near shriek, dripping with venom, a mix of rage and desperation that filled the chamber like a storm breaking over fragile glass. "You don't understand. You'll pay for this. Mark my words. You'll regret ever crossing me." Crockett remained still, an island of unshakable calm amid the tempest. Her eyes, sharp as tempered steel, never left him. She did not flinch, did not blink, did not give an inch of fear. In that silence, the contrast between predator and crusader became stark. one consumed by fury, the other radiating an unshakable force of justice. The audience, once passive, now reacted in waves. Some murmured indignantly, shocked at the raw exposure of temperament. Others whispered in astonishment at the composure of Crockett, standing firm as if the chaos surrounding her could not touch her. The camera lenses captured every detail: the twitch of a jaw, the narrowing of eyes, the tremor in a clenched fist. Trump's threats escalated, sharper, more personal. "You think you're some kind of hero? Some warrior for justice? I am the reality. I am the power. You're nothing but a—" His words broke into a staccato of curses. The decorum of the chamber shattered, replaced by the pure, unfiltered rawness of his fury. Spectators recoiled. Gasps and murmurs turned into audible reactions. Some covered their mouths in disbelief. Others leaned forward, riveted by the unmasking of a man who had long presented an untouchable exterior. Even aides, who had once exuded confidence, now shifted uncomfortably, aware that the balance of perception had irreversibly changed. Crockett did not respond immediately. She let the moment stretch, allowing his tirade to echo, allowing the chamber to feel the full weight of his unraveling. Each curse, each threat, each lapse in control only emphasized her methodical, unwavering calm. She was the eye in the storm, a presence so commanding that even the most furious outburst could not penetrate her composure. Trump's voice quavered now, rising and falling unpredictably. You think the world will side with you? They don't. You're going to pay, you hear me? Pay for questioning me." His hands shook visibly, slamming the table with such force that pens rolled across the polished surface. The chamber's oak seemed to vibrate under the impact, mirroring the tremor in his authority. Crockett finally spoke, voice low but sharp, cutting through the storm of rage like a blade. "Mr. Trump," she said, measured and deliberate, "threats and vulgarities will not alter the facts. They will not erase the evidence, nor will they intimidate those who seek truth and justice. This chamber and history witnesses your unraveling precisely because you are confronted by accountability." The tension ratcheted higher. Trump's mouth opened to interrupt, but words stumbled, fractured by the realization that his usual arsenal of bluster, deflection, and theatrics was failing. Each gestured threat, each curse, only underscored the control slipping from his grasp. The predator, once untouchable, now appeared human, imperfect, exposed, vulnerable. The gallery reacted en masse. Camera lenses zoomed, capturing the contorted features of rage, the sweat on his brow, the trembling of hands that had long commanded rooms with certainty. Viewers watching from afar would later replay these moments, each frame an unflinching look at the collapse of performative dominance under relentless truth. And yet Crockett remained resolute, her eyes unwavering, fixed on him with a calm intensity that both absorbed and redirected the energy around her. In her stillness, the chamber felt a moral clarity crystallize, as if the storm outside of her composure had no power within it. She was the counterbalance, the unmovable pillar against the tempest of fury. Trump's fury escalated further, voice cracking into a scream that reverberated through the high ceilings. "I won't be humiliated by a—" He could not finish the sentence, the words lost amidst gasps, camera clicks, and murmurs. His usual dominance, the persona of invincibility, had been stripped bare in front of every eye. Crockett took a slow step forward, voice calm, measured, each word a scalpel carving through chaos. "You are not being humiliated, Mr. Trump. You are being held accountable. And this is not personal. It is justice." The chamber erupted in reactions, some clapping, some murmuring, some still in shock. The air vibrated with tension and anticipation. The apex predator had been cornered, exposed, stripped of pretense. The balance of the session had shifted irrevocably as fury clashed with reason and chaos met unyielding composure. Trump's shoulders slumped slightly, his hands still shaking. The vehemence of his tirade had run into a wall of unassailable calm. The eruption had reached its peak, and in that cacophony, Crockett's presence dominated, the moral center of the storm, as the chamber absorbed every moment of raw exposure. For a fleeting heartbeat, the room was suspended in stunned silence. Then slowly, murmurs, clicks, and whispers returned. But the message was clear. The predator had been cornered, and the warrior had proven unshakable. The confrontation had reached a fever pitch, and the chamber, the witnesses, and the world would not soon forget the sight of power laid bare before relentless truth. Crockett straightened, her eyes sweeping the chamber, calm and commanding. Then with deliberate precision, she signaled an aide, who wheeled in a small screen, the hum of electronics cutting through the tension like a quiet prelude before a storm. "What you are about to see," Crockett said, her voice steady and unflinching, "is not speculation, not hearsay, and not interpretation. This is the undeniable record." The room held its collective breath. Trump's eyes narrowed, a flicker of dread passing over the usually unshakable mask. Cameras pivoted, journalists leaned forward, and even some of his staunch supporters froze, sensing the imminence of revelation. The air grew thick, charged, as though the chamber itself awaited the revelation. Crockett pressed a button. The screen flickered to life, casting a pale light across the faces of every witness. The first frames revealed documents, emails, and then, suddenly, a video feed. Trump's own words captured unmistakably, describing actions and strategies that mirrored every accusation she had meticulously laid out. The chamber froze. Silence descended like a physical weight. The only sound was the faint whirring of the projector, the subtle shifting of feet, and the soft intake of breath from the gallery. Eyes widened. Pens hovered in midair. Cameras zoomed and refocused, capturing the expression of every observer. Trump's lips parted, a faint whisper escaping, almost inaudible. "No, this can't be." His usual bluster failed him, leaving only disbelief and the stark recognition of exposure. He sat frozen, staring at the screen, every twitch of his hand betraying the internal unraveling that words could no longer disguise. Crockett's voice, calm and unwavering, cut through the room, framing the moment with absolute clarity. Every claim of innocence, every attempt at deflection, every threat and curse uttered in desperation, this footage confirms the truth. The record does not lie, the documents do not bend, and the facts will not be dismissed. The silence was suffocating, yet pregnant with the weight of finality. Each frame of the video, each corroborating document, was a blow delivered with the precision of a master strategist. The chamber absorbed it all, the moral gravity, the undeniable clarity, the weight of historical consequence. Trump's usual defensive gestures, a raised hand, a deflective wave, a sharp intake of breath, had no power here. Each attempt to disrupt, to challenge, to dominate, met only the cold, unyielding wall of evidence. His eyes darted from the screen to Crockett, then back, trying to find some flaw, some escape, some angle that could reclaim lost control. There was none. The gallery was captivated. Journalists paused mid-note, some gasped softly, some whispered astonishment. Even the most hardened observers felt the shift, the undeniable force of truth manifesting in a way that demanded attention, respect, and recognition. It was a moment that seemed to suspend time, each tick of the clock resonating like a drumbeat toward inevitable consequence. Crockett stepped closer to the screen, her posture perfect, her presence commanding. "This is the culmination of transparency, of justice, and of accountability," she said. Her voice, calm yet imbued with intensity, carried across the chamber like a proclamation. "This is the moment where actions are laid bare, where words meet proof, and where power is confronted by truth." Trump's hands gripped the edges of the table, knuckles white, trembling slightly. His face, once flushed with the performative arrogance of control, now displayed the pale mask of shock and vulnerability. He opened his mouth, perhaps to interrupt, to deflect, to deny. But the words faltered, stuck in a throat suddenly devoid of confidence. The room felt the weight of the moment collectively. Every eye was fixed on the predator now caught in the glare of exposure. Every witness understood. This was the sword through the heart, the decisive strike that left no room for maneuver, no space for deflection. No possibility for escape. History, accountability, and justice converged in a single, electrifying instant. Crockett allowed a pause, letting the silence stretch. The pause was deliberate, a tactical maneuver that amplified the impact. In that stillness, the moral and factual clarity of her victory sank deep into the consciousness of everyone present. Trump's gaze wavered, lips pressed tightly together, a visible shiver betraying the recognition of defeat. Then softly she concluded, "Power can intimidate, authority can threaten, words can bluster. But when truth is undeniable, when evidence is irrefutable, when justice is unwavering, no predator, no matter how formidable, can escape accountability. The chamber has seen it, the world has seen it, and you, Mr. Trump, cannot deny it." The room exhaled as one entity. Some applauded cautiously, others murmured, all absorbed in the sheer gravity of what had transpired. Trump remained seated, stunned, uncharacteristically still. The veneer of invincibility stripped away by unflinching scrutiny and unassailable evidence. Crockett, calm and resolute, had delivered the final, decisive blow. And in that charged, silent aftermath, it was clear to everyone present. The battle had reached its terminus. The predator had been exposed. The warrior had triumphed. The chamber, the witnesses, and the world would remember this moment, the sword of truth piercing the armor of arrogance, and the unyielding courage of a crusader standing unshaken before the storm. Trump's face was a canvas of disbelief and dawning despair. He opened his mouth as if to offer a rebuttal, a last grasp at control, but the words came out fragmented, hollow, and unconvincing. I was misunderstood. People will see. It's not what it looks like." His voice faltered under the weight of scrutiny, each syllable eroded by the undeniable evidence still flickering on the screen behind him. Every gesture, every twitch betrayed a man accustomed to dominance, now rendered powerless. He fumbled with his papers, hands shaking slightly, crumpling memos he had once used as weapons. His usual commanding posture slumped into a stoop of defeat, shoulders sagging, head bowing, the aura of authority dissolving like smoke in the harsh light of truth. The gallery watched in a hushed mixture of awe and shock. Cameras captured each micro-expression, the quick dart of his eyes, the pressed lips, the subtle quiver of a jaw. Even those who had once admired or supported him now saw the man behind the facade, stripped of pretense, exposed in a moment of historical clarity. Trump tried again, flailing for a foothold in the shifting landscape of perception. "Look, I've done so much for this country. People will understand." But the words rang hollow, echoing in the chamber as if swallowed by its high ceilings. They carried none of the weight they once commanded, dissipating in the tense silence that hung like a pall over the room. The contrast between him and Crockett could not have been starker. She remained poised, resolute, eyes steady, body calm, every movement deliberate. She did not need to speak. Her presence alone underscored the collapse unfolding before every lens, microphone, and observer. She had delivered justice with precision, and now history watched the consequences manifest in real time. Trump's hands clenched, then relaxed, trembling, hovering over the table as though unsure whether to strike or shield himself. He attempted a faint smile, a gesture meant to salvage dignity, but it faltered instantly, twisting into an expression of raw, human frustration. His breathing was uneven, chest rising and falling in shallow, rapid bursts, each inhale a reminder of the mounting realization. The predator had been caught, exposed, and bested. The reporters moved almost instinctively, capturing what would later be called a historical image. The man of towering influence reduced to a figure of vulnerable humanity, cornered by the precise, relentless pursuit of truth. Shutters clicked relentlessly, pens scribbled furiously, and microphones picked up the faintest whispers that rippled through the chamber. Every note, every image, every frame was a testament to the collapse of performative power in the face of accountability. Trump's eyes darted to Crockett, a mixture of anger, disbelief, and humiliation flashing in their depths. He opened his mouth again, as if to salvage some remnant of pride, but the words stumbled out, ineffective and fragmented. You don't understand. It's not fair. The pleading edge in his voice was unmistakable, a tonal departure from the assertive authority he had wielded moments before. The chamber seemed to contract around him, the air thick with the weight of observation, scrutiny, and collective judgment. Every breath, every hesitation, every shift in posture spoke louder than any speech. The predator had been cornered not by brute force or spectacle, but by meticulous, unyielding truth, a truth he could neither evade nor manipulate. Observers whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others murmuring their acknowledgement of Crockett's unassailable strategy. Even staunch supporters appeared to waver, the aura of invincibility evaporating before their eyes. The man who had long commanded rooms with a combination of charisma, bluster, and intimidation now sat subdued, a powerful symbol of hubris undone. Trump's gaze fell to the table, eyes narrowing but lacking conviction, scanning for allies, for rescue, for some unseen lifeline. There was none. The chamber was saturated with the gravity of historical consequence. The weight of accountability pressed upon him, manifest in every detail. From the pale sheen on his forehead to the subtle twitch in his jaw, from the restless shifting of his legs to the slow exhalation of despair that escaped him almost involuntarily. Crockett's voice finally broke the silence, gentle but resolute, a reminder of the triumph that had led to this moment. Accountability is not vengeance, Mr. Trump. It is the safeguard of democracy, the principle that power is not absolute and that actions carry consequences. You are witnessing not just your exposure, but the affirmation of justice itself. Trump's shoulders slumped further, his body language the epitome of defeat. The aura of intimidation had crumbled. Words failed. Gestures betrayed internal turmoil. In the eyes of the world and recorded forever by the lenses capturing each moment, he was a figure of power undone, authority reduced to vulnerability, dominance eclipsed by the unwavering pursuit of truth. The chamber exhaled collectively, some softly, some in audible acknowledgement of the historical gravity. The press leaned closer, capturing the expressions, the stifled breaths, the subtle shaking hands, the eyes wide with disbelief. Every observer understood that they were witnessing a collapse not merely of persona, but of the carefully constructed empire of influence, exposed before scrutiny and conscience. For a long suspended moment, Trump sat, silent, defeated, unable to summon words that could alter the narrative now permanently etched into history. Crockett's unwavering presence, precise strategy, and unrelenting pursuit of justice had delivered an indelible lesson. Even the most formidable predator could be humbled when confronted by truth wielded without compromise. And in that suspended, almost sacred moment, cameras and observers captured it all: the humiliation, the despair, the undeniable collapse of authority. Trump had lost not in rhetoric or debate alone, but in the court of historical judgment before the unblinking eyes of accountability. The chamber would not soon forget, and neither would the world. Crockett stood perfectly still for a heartbeat, allowing the weight of what had transpired to settle across the room. Then slowly she straightened, her spine erect, her shoulders squared, and her gaze blazing with an intensity that could ignite steel. The fire in her eyes reflected not only the triumph of the moment, but the enduring resolve of one who had faced power without flinching. She was calm, yet every inch of her presence radiated authority, courage, and unyielding moral clarity. The chamber erupted. A ripple of applause surged forward, hesitant at first, then building into a wave of recognition and admiration. Spectators stood, some cheering, some clapping rhythmically, others calling her name. "Crockett! Crockett! Warrior of justice!" The words echoed through the high ceilings, reverberating against the polished wood and marble, mingling with the flashes of cameras and the hurried scribbles of journalists, capturing every detail for history. Crockett's lips curved into a small, composed smile, but her eyes remained sharp, focused, and alert. She understood the gravity of the moment. The fleeting glory of triumph was never her goal. It was justice, accountability, and the unwavering commitment to truth that drove her. The recognition of the chamber, the cheers of the public, and the media frenzy were validation of her efforts. Yet she knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. The press descended upon the scene like a tidal wave, capturing images that would dominate headlines for days, weeks, and months. Camera lenses framed her from every angle, the fierce intensity in her gaze, the subtle control of her posture, the calm precision with which she moved even amid chaos. Photographs would circulate globally, tweeted and reposted millions of times, each frame a testament to the enduring power of principled courage against corruption and spectacle. News outlets scrambled to summarize the historic confrontation. "Crockett stands unshaken as Trump falls," one headline screamed, accompanied by a photo capturing her in mid-step, eyes ablaze, voice firm, hand raised slightly as though to both command attention and signal the inexorability of justice. Social media erupted, hashtags trending within minutes. "Warrior of Justice," "Crockett vs. Trump," "Truth Prevails." Millions commented, shared, and debated, creating a virtual echo chamber, amplifying the symbolism of the moment. Yet amidst the clamor, Crockett's mind was not on glory. She scanned the room, taking in the reactions, the awe, the vindication, the relief of those who had waited for accountability, and even the shock and bitterness of those who had supported the man now humbled. She knew history was being written in real time, and she also knew that the true work of justice stretched far beyond this chamber, far beyond this confrontation. Her gaze briefly flicked toward Trump. The man who had dominated rooms with bluster and menace now sat subdued, hands clasped, shoulders slumped, the veneer of invincibility shattered. She felt no satisfaction in his humiliation. The victory was not personal. It was institutional, moral, societal. It was proof that power could be challenged, that truth could prevail, and that no one, regardless of wealth, influence, or intimidation, was above the reach of accountability. The murmurs of the chamber turned into structured, deliberate applause as more and more people stood, a spontaneous acknowledgement of what Crockett represented. Senior aides, lawyers, and even neutral observers could not help but reflect on the rarity of the spectacle. A single individual confronting the apex predator of a political arena and succeeding not through theatrics, but through the meticulous orchestration of truth, evidence, and relentless moral courage. As the applause continued, Crockett lifted her chin slightly, absorbing the moment with dignity. Her training, her preparation, her focus had converged into a singular act of accountability, witnessed by journalists, historians, and the world alike. Yet in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. The fight against injustice, corruption, and abuse of power was far from over. This confrontation, however historic, was a single skirmish in a battle that would stretch for years, demanding vigilance, courage, and unwavering commitment. Media crews jostled to get interviews, flashes fired in rapid succession, and microphones were thrust forward. Crockett spoke with measured clarity, addressing both the immediate victory and the broader implications. Today is not about personal triumph. It is about the principle that no one stands above justice. We must remain vigilant, and we must continue to confront wrongdoing wherever it appears. This is a call to action, not a celebration. Even as she spoke, the chamber hummed with energy. Observers were still processing the raw spectacle of the confrontation, the fall of a once seemingly untouchable figure, and the steady, uncompromising presence of the crusader who had orchestrated his exposure. Each word she spoke was amplified by the weight of the moment, echoing far beyond the walls of the chamber, into newsrooms, living rooms, and virtual spaces across the globe. Supporters rose to their feet once more, voices intertwining in chants of admiration. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" The sound was both jubilant and solemn, a recognition of the gravity of what had transpired and the ongoing responsibility to uphold the standards it represented. Crockett remained at the center, the calm, radiant focal point of this historic convergence of truth, courage, and public witness. She allowed herself a brief, controlled exhale. The storm of the day had passed, leaving in its wake not only victory but a profound understanding. The work ahead would require the same diligence, precision, and unwavering commitment she had displayed here. The symbolic triumph in the chamber was powerful, but the real struggle, The preservation of justice, the confrontation of inequity, the vigilance against corruption was only beginning. Crockett's final glance swept across the gallery. Every camera, every observer, every journalist had captured the essence of what she represented. The embodiment of integrity standing firm against intimidation, the unflinching warrior of justice, the symbol that accountability could and would prevail. The applause swelled once more, and the world watched as she exited the chamber, each step deliberate, each movement a declaration of unwavering resolve. And as the doors closed behind her, leaving the chamber steeped in the echoes of history, Crockett's mind was already focused on the battles ahead. She knew this confrontation, though monumental, was merely the opening salvo in a long campaign for truth and justice. Yet in that charged, unforgettable moment, she had become more than a warrior. She had become a symbol, a beacon, a living testament to the enduring power of courage and conviction in the face of overwhelming opposition. In the quiet aftermath of triumph, one truth endures. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the unwavering commitment to stand for what is right, even when the world trembles. Crockett's journey reminds us that integrity wields power greater than any title, wealth, or influence, and that one steadfast soul can illuminate the path for countless others. Let this story inspire us to face injustice with conviction, to speak boldly against wrongdoing, and to nurture the courage within ourselves, because every act of truth brings the world one step closer to justice and compassion. If this story moved you, don't scroll past, sit with it, reflect on it, share it, comment, and send it to someone who believes courage and truth still matter. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where injustice never goes unchallenged. Hit the bell, because the next story will dig deeper, confront harder, and reveal more than you expect. This story is a fictional dramatization, inspired by real battles for justice and acts of unwavering courage. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental or symbolic, meant to spark reflection and discussion. Thanks for watching. Justice isn't given, it's claimed. This is Harrison Stories.